Welcome to part 1 of the C2 development series. In this part we are going to initiate our project and start with the server code. As you can see, I have already opened VS Code and I have this client script right here. This is a simple reverse shell in Python that we are going to be using for this series. If you're not 100% sure you understand this code, check out this video about reverse shells. I have explained all of this in detail in the video. As we develop the server, we are sometimes going to be coming back to this code as well to implement some features on the client side. Okay, let's create our server folder and let's initialize a new project. Let's create our main file. Let's begin by creating the interactive shell that the C2 operator will use. Let's start with an infinite loop. Let's create our object for reading from standard in. Let's print a hashtag to denote that we are in a shell. And let's read input from the user. Now let's split the user input by spaces so that we can use the first string as the command and the second as the parameter. If the user just pressed enter and didn't input any command, this variable will hold 0 values. So we can check that and continue if that's the case, because there is no command to process. Now we can begin a switch statement and we can switch the first value in our slice. For now, I will create a case for every valid command, but I will not implement the logic. Later in the series, we're going to implement the logic as we go. Okay, those are all our commands. We can even quickly implement exit. And we can also create a help function and implement help as well. Okay, let's see what our program does so far. As you can see, we have this interactive menu. But none of the commands work yet. Now that we can read the input of our user, let's build a part that is actually going to accept connections. I'll implement a new type, so let's create it in a new file. Our type is going to be responsible for listening for connections on a given port, so let's call it server. Let's define our type. And here we are going to have two properties. The first is going to be the port we want the server to listen on. And the second one is going to be a channel. Our server object is going to use this channel to notify other Go routines that a new connection has been received. This will hopefully become more clear to you in a moment. For now, just remember, all we need to do is when we receive a connection, send it over this channel. Let's create an initializer function of our object. By the way, I forgot to mention that we're defining this channel as a write-only channel in this object. The reason for that is this object is only going to be sending new connections over this channel. It is not going to be receiving anything. Now let's create a listen method of this type. Ideally, this function should not stop, but if it does, we are going to return an error for a reason it did stop. Let's first convert our port to a string. And now we can start our listener. We are going to use the listen function from the net package. We are going to listen on TCP ports and we are going to listen on all available interfaces. That's what this means. And we are going to listen on the port that was specified when we initialize the object. Let's check for errors and return if there is any. Okay, so this code we write here will be reached if there were no errors creating this listener. So let's make sure our listener is closed when we are exiting this function. And now we can start accepting connections. In an infinite loop, we're going to call our listener object's accept method. Check for errors. If there is an error, the listen method will return. As you can see, this accept method returns a net.con object. That is why we used this type as well for our channel. So all we need to do now is send this object we received, this connection object, into the channel. And there we go. Our object responsible for listening for connections is now done. All we need to do is use it in our main function. I will save. And let's come back here. I will actually create a new function in our main.go file. This function will be a handler for new connections. It will be responsible for performing the necessary logic when it receives a signal that a new connection has been established with the server. As a parameter for this handler function, we are going to need the same channel that the server is sending to. This time I'm marking it as a receive-only channel, because it is just going to read from this channel and handle the new connections. So let's iterate over every new connection on this channel. And for now we can just print that there is a new connection. Notice that I'm using the remote ADDR and local ADDR of our connection object. This way we can find out from where this connection came. Okay, now we have the listener, which is going to supply new connections to the channel, and we have the handler, which is going to handle the new connections on the channel. All we need to do is tie them together, and we're going to do this in the main function here. So let's create a new channel. To make things cleaner, I'm going to be creating and closing channels only in the main method, and the main method will have the responsibility to pass them around to other parts of the program. So let's do exactly that. Let's initialize a new server object. Our server is now set up to listen on port 7777 and send new connections to this channel. We just need to run the listen method. Of course, it is very important to run it concurrently. We don't want our listener to be blocking the interaction with the user that we implemented right here. That is why we are going to run the listen method on a new Go routine. Now we just need to handle the incoming connections. We already implemented the function for that, and we are also going to run this on another new Go routine. We don't want the handler to interfere with the user interaction right here, so let's run it on a new Go routine. And we will also pass the same channel. Now we have connected this listen function to this handler via this channel. The reason we are using a channel is because these two functions are running on separate Go routines. And as you know, channels are thread safe. Let's test it. I will save the main file. I will also save the server, and let's give it a go. Let's run our server, and now let's run a client. And there we go. As you can see, the server recognized that the client is connecting, and it displayed this message right here to the user. Let's open another terminal and connect another client. There we go, it is working with multiple clients. We don't yet have a way for the client and server to communicate, so we currently can't do anything with these connections. Also, we still haven't implemented the sessions functionality, so we cannot check that these sessions are connected. These are things we're going to be doing next up in the series. See you in the next episode.